Hi, boys and girls. It's Mrs. Yuvik. I'm here for our last ELA lesson online. These lessons are for the week of June 8th, and next week is summer vacation. But before we go, let's talk about similes and metaphors. I've got a book I'm going to show you, a little chart, and a little video at the end. So let's get to it. Similes and metaphors. We've talked about this. We've added them in our poems. We've talked about them in reading. But this week we're going to work on writing some of them. Okay, this is a quick book by Anne Heinrichs, illustrated by Dan McGee and David Moore. Oops, got to move myself here. When a bear is like a ballerina. Once a bear went ice skating. The bear was graceful. He seemed to float along. His smile was sweet. That story's okay, but isn't the next one more interesting? The bear was as graceful as a ballerina. He seemed to float along like a butterfly. His smile was as sweet as honey. What happened? We added similes. As graceful as a ballerina, like a butterfly, and as sweet as honey. Let's talk about what those might be. Similes compare two things. The two things need to be different in most ways, but alike in a surprising or important way. So if we're going to compare a bear and a ballerina don't have a lot in common, but they are both graceful. The bear and the butterfly, they both floated through. And a smile and honey, both are sweet. Honey is sweet to taste, a smile is sweet to see. A simile is an interesting way of describing something. It can clear things up. It can make a story funny. After all, how could a bear be like a butterfly? Only in a simile. As white as snow. Some similes use the word as. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow. My new blue blanket is as soft as a kitten. After the race, Claire's legs were as limp as noodles. My eyes are as big as saucers. Like a log. Some similes use the word like. These similes usually answer the question, how? How did the dog sleep? The dog slept like a log. How fast did you run? I ran like the wind. These cookies taste like sawdust. They don't really taste like sawdust, but it's telling us how horrible they must taste. All right, all the time, similes compare two things, but they don't have to be objects. They can be entire activities, and they can take many words to explain. Looking for my sister in the mall is like looking for a needle in a haystack. I'm grounded all week. I feel like a bug trapped in a jar. People swarmed around the movie star like ants near a box of donuts. I'm snug as a bug in a rug. Here's a whole bunch more. Take a second and read these. And some of them you may have heard. Cool as a cucumber. It's easy as ABC. That one's in a song. Flat as a pancake. Grows like weeds. All of those. Light as a feather. I don't think that elephant is light as a feather. Here's some jokes for you. Similes can make good jokes. They compare things that are very different. How is a rabbit like a cornstalk? They both have big ears. How is a baby like an old car? They both have a rattle. How are pancakes like a baseball team? They both need a good batter. I bet you guys can come up with some good simile jokes. There's another way to compare things called a metaphor. Her home is her castle. The kid never stops eating. He's a bottomless pit. Those sisters are two peas in a pod. In each one of these examples, the colored words create a metaphor. Home, castle, he, bottomless pit, sisters, two peas in a pod. They compare two different things that are alike in one important way. However, a metaphor doesn't use like or as. In a metaphor, one thing is just something else. Swim like a fish, eat like a pig. Similes and metaphors often use animals. We usually like to give animals certain traits. Whales are big, pigs are messy or greedy. Sometimes the animals really have these traits. Sometimes they're untrue or exaggerated. Whales are really big, but pigs are actually quite clean. All right. Here are some animals and their traits. Which ones do you think are exaggerated? A chicken is fearful. Oh, that's like our little red hen story. A lion is brave. If you read Lion and Mouse, think about that one. A mule is stubborn. An ox is wise. An ox is strong. A peacock is proud. And a weasel is sneaky. Life is just a bowl of cherries. Many songs and poems use metaphors. Some of the metaphors have become common sayings. You are my sunshine. What does that mean? It means you're a bright spot in my life. Do you know any songs or poems with metaphors or similes? I want you to think about that. Okay, so let's review real quick. Maybe edit this part out. Metaphors and similes. What's a metaphor? A metaphor is a figure of speech that says one thing is the same as the other. A simile compares two things using like or as. Okay. Her beautiful voice is music to my ears. Her beautiful voice is like music to my ears. One uses like or as, that makes it a simile. The other compares. Judy is a silly clown. Judy is as silly as a clown. Which one of those is the metaphor? You're right, it's this one. Judy is as silly. I'm sorry, the simile, as silly. Judy is a silly clown is the metaphor. Here are some common similes that I'm sure you've heard. Hot as the sun, blind as a bat, sick as a dog. And here are some metaphors. He is a ghost. He is a sick dog. She is a silly goose. If you remember that similes compare using like or as, and metaphors use two different things. All right, let's wrap this lesson up with a little bit of similes and metaphors from the bazillions. Sometimes you're hot and then sometimes you're
that'll be music to my ears. That's another metaphor. Yeah. You get it. Whoa, similes and metaphors, a similar, nothing more. Similes and metaphors, a similar, nothing more. Similes and metaphors, a similar, nothing more. Similes and metaphors, a similar, nothing more.
All right, boys and girls, that's similes and metaphors. That's how we're going to finish up our figurative language lesson and our last lesson for the year. Go work on some similes and metaphors. I want you to be as busy as a bee. See you all later.